Good morning. I think Corinne's given an excellent analysis of the public sector funding situation. I think London recognised 3 or 4 years ago that public funding would be squeezed, and part of its response was capital ambition. And capital ambition is a well-supported partnership, not just involving London councils, but involving the Greater London Authority, the London Fire Service, National Health Service, and actually business organisations. So it is actually a grouping of organisations taking a London-wide view. It's not just officers, elected members sit on the boards, and it has access to quite considerable pump priming and good resources from London councils who provide programme management and appropriate accountability of money that's been spent. The remit of capital ambition is to make sure that London is a world-class city. But a part of that, it's always concentrated on efficiency. Initially, London Centre of Excellence, and now the Efficiency Board of Capital Ambition. There's 4 main strands that it's looked at actually combining the strength of London by working together. First of all, procurement, sharing knowledge, sharing services, and then more recently, supplier relationship development. Procurement, and I'm not asking you to read the small print, has actually benefited from an enormous analysis of the market that London actually uses. There are areas where actually probably there's little to be gained and it's not worth trying to sort of spend time on that. There's other areas which are very, very difficult to exploit opportunities. And the analysis worked out where were the areas that should be focused on, and then came up with a strategy how to deal with those. One strategy, which is not uncommon and well supported by OGC, was e-auctions. And e-auctions has realised real significant cashable savings. One example being ICT hardware, where there was a saving for 15 London authorities of 1.9 million, and that was replicated across the UK with significant other savings. Other initiatives around procurement is actually helping to shape the market. One example is parking in partnership. Most local authorities actually operate parking meters. Unfortunately, most local authorities also fine people for overstaying and collect money, and probably not the most popular people in the world. However, each authority tends to have a particular individual design for its parking meter, a set of separate paperwork for the administration, and different procedures for collecting it. This neither is particularly efficient, nor is it very useful to suppliers who have to tool up production runs in different ways for individual orders. Parking in partnership was designed both to draw authorities together, but more helpfully help suppliers to actually get economies of scale by being able to design a product where there'd be a broader mass market. And that's actually delivered big capital savings as well as operational savings, and those savings continue to accrue as parking in partnership is extended across London. A third area is actually exploiting existing deals. Saving in postal services, not a particular new thing, but quite often good practice is buried in one authority and not shared. And part of Capital Ambition's programme has been to make sure that deals are accessible to other authorities and the benefits then shared. And that's given savings up to 20 to 25% for certain authorities. The fourth category I'd call smarter working. A good example of this is the London Energy Project, which has received national awards, and that's actually tackled buying utilities, quite complex, and many officers in local authorities really are trading off historic knowledge, not necessarily understanding day-to-day spot purchases or different techniques for how to buy utilities. The London Energy Project has actually helped to spread the best practice for how you buy, as well as helping some of the interfaces adopt perhaps approaches that are more likely to exploit gains for public bodies. The savings to date have been significant and are estimated to be many, many millions in the coming year. E-auction, we believe, is a route that has an opportunity. We're looking at highways materials. The market there for London is up to 250 million. Commercial vehicles, spending nearly 100 million. And extending ICT into areas such as telecoms, again, maybe a market of 100 million. OGC are fully supporting this initiative. And the question is, why did Capital Ambition choose those particular areas? Well, our experience of e-auctions is you have to pick markets where, in principle, you can standardise ranges and specifications. It doesn't mean you need one specification or one range, but you do need a limited amount of ranges and specifications if you're going to go out to e-auction. You also have to have reasonable expenditure. There is considerable officer effort in trying to get an e-auction launched. To save tens of thousands, not worth it. To save millions, very well worth it. And there has to be markets where London can exercise leverage. If there's only one supplier, to be honest, e-auctions won't work. We estimate a 10% improvement in the areas just previously mentioned could generate a further £45 million savings, hence why we're concentrating on those areas. But we also believe outside procurement, sharing knowledge is absolutely critical if London is going to increase its efficiency. It is very difficult gathering knowledge by phoning another 32 authorities. It's time consuming and the information can often be partial and not necessary apples for apples. London has set up an online expenditure analysis, now 27 boroughs, plus the London Fire Service involved, who are actually sharing data of 7.7 billion of expenditure. This information has proved incredibly useful when actually trying to work out which efficiency projects should be pursued, for actually justifying business cases and actually looking at which suppliers should we work with to actually develop further efficiencies. Another example of sharing knowledge is what we call the London Efficiency Challenge. This is a voluntary scheme led by the London Borough Treasurers, where an authority will invite in a team from other London authorities, the IDA, as well as Capital Ambition, led by a London Treasurer, to actually say how efficient is your own authority. And the advantage of that is they have knowledge of what the other 32 authorities are doing to gain efficiencies. So it's a tremendous peer review benchmarking exercise. It does require a bit of moral courage. Nobody particularly likes opening the books, being exposed potentially to a criticism that could be turned against you. But the net gain is huge, that actually you're getting free consultancy based on real life data. It's been incredibly well supported, and interestingly, quite middle managers in organisations have actually found it beneficial, and indeed you could argue more beneficial than perhaps some of the big firms coming in with their expert charts, etc., because this is quite practical work that takes place. Other examples are the contracts register, where on electronic holding of contracts, there's a forward plan of what contracts are going to be let, and this enables authorities to contact other authorities and say, can we join your contract and therefore get a bigger payback? Other ones, the London Energy Project, again, carbon credits, as we know, is going to be a big burden on local authorities. Actually spreading good practice, how are people approaching carbon credits, has saved a considerable amount of money.